money on my mind. Gotta hustle and grind. Financial literacy always on my mind. I'm stacking knowledge, no time to waste. Gotta invest smart, gotta keep up the pace. I'm reading books, learning all the tricks, studying the market, making calculated picks.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy Reckless Ray Dinero, and we are back at it again for another bag talk. This week, we're going to be talking about financial stances and what they mean, giving examples based off of my income portfolio. So these are just three stances that I came up with because I realized as I was looking through how I navigate the markets, how I move, how I manage my money, I'm generally in three stances. And so I wanted to do a breakdown on those three stances, what they mean, and hopefully they add value to you. So that way you can logically see where you're at in the market, where you're at with your finances, and navigate accordingly. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Before we do that, I'd like to make sure that we handle the housekeeping. So do not forget to hit the like. If you've been here more than twice, go ahead and subscribe. For those of you who are already subscribed and have already hit the like button, do me a favor and do not forget to share the video. We're going to leave it at that, and let's go ahead and jump on into it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about out of the stances, let me go ahead and pull this portfolio up real quick so we got something to look at also. Boom. And then bring it to the stage. Boom. Okay. For those of you who are not looking, we're looking at the income portfolio. We're down about 4.56%, which honestly, this portfolio is made to produce income. So it being down around 5% is par for the course. I've seen it worse, way worse. And that is fine as long as we are getting paid, because that's what this portfolio is here for. The first position that we're going to look at is the defensive position, which I feel like most people get stuck in. That's where you guys live, most of you. Like average Joe just lives in the defensive position. So how do I break down the defensive position? That's the Boomer Dave Ramsey plan at this point. You're playing to not lose money. I worked hard for this money and I don't want to risk any of it. It's low volatility, low chance of number go down. You can't deal with red number. You're just not capable of seeing things go against you, which normally means that you are putting your money in the bank. These are people who talk about how much cash they have in the bank. Even though you're losing money via inflation, you don't have to physically see it because the bank doesn't show that. You can just buy less stuff. That is the defensive position for most Americans. Obviously, I live in America. I do my content for people in America primarily because I don't know the financial situation anywhere else. I am only playing the game on the board that I'm currently sitting in, which is America. So for most people, they will put money in the bank, make sure you're saving, save, pay cash for everything. Those are what I would consider defensive positions. You're scared to use credit because, you could end up buried in debt. You're scared to really invest in anything because the number could go down. Or everything is a scam. That's another commonality amongst brokies, is everything's a scam. For me personally, my defensive positions out of the income portfolio are my SATA, my STRC, and my QQQY. Why do I say that? Because SATA is generally low volatility. Obviously, we've had some swings in the market. I am buying strategy. I am buying that dip. My SATA, I am buying that sub $100. Also, I consider that a buy. But STRC right now, great deal. It's how I'm saving to eventually bulk pay down my house or generate enough passive income to just manage the payment for my mortgage. So every time I get a little bit of extra cash, we take a little bit out of here. Obviously, I've already done a video on me and my belief on keeping a cushion on your mortgage. So we keep 4 months of cushion in my mortgage just in case something goes wrong, in case you lose a job, in case you come on hard times, in case the money tightens up. That is also a defensive stance for me, is making sure to plan for worst case scenarios to where I am keeping my domicile that I live in. So that way there's a roof over my head and the internet's on. As long as I've got those two things, I can probably figure out a way to make a little bit of cash. But SATA, STRC, and QQQY are my defensive positions. QQQY, broad spectrum, it's technology. Obviously, we're not getting any less technological. Generally, over time, this position does really well. The SATA, STRC are cash positions. Those are the lowest income producing positions that I have. I look at those literally as a cash balance. I would rather take the volatility of SATA and STRC than keep my money in the bank personally. Now, that's just me, because the money that I'm keeping in the bank, the just in case money, I want that money working. I want that money, adding to itself. So that's one of the things that is kind of a big deal for me. Oh, actually, I need to set both of these to drip because I forgot to do that. And that's going to be bi-weekly. Get that set to drip too. Okay. So yeah, and that's the indicator on that is oh, that's interesting. So note to self on Charles Schwab, SATA, we can't turn drip on right now. We can't, since they switched to daily, the institutions aren't set for that since it's the first daily income product. We can't set it to drip, which is pretty interesting. So I guess we will not be dripping those dividends, and we will just be buying X amount, I guess, every month. But that's okay. It's still chipping away at that margin amount, so that is totally fine. But yeah, as far as my defensive plays go, those are the defensive positions that I have. So we can go ahead and nix those off so we can get down into the equities, etc., and move to the next, which is what I would consider my neutral stance. Now, a neutral stance position is going to be for those who are in the traditional finance world. I'm going to break this down based against the boomer model, because that's going to kind of fall under the defensive neutral. A lot of that is going to be your positions like the S&P 500, the QQQ. Now, I understand I put QQQY in a defensive position for me, and that's because these positions are subject to be sold off if a great opportunity comes along and I want to move into a more aggressive stance. So I look at those as cash positions, meaning I will sell them down and then buy them back as needed if I need to, or if the opportunity becomes so ridiculously apparent that, there's no reason for me to not throw a little bit of money at something. And normally QQQY is what I will sell off first out of that cash position, because it's a little bit more aggressive. It's set to drip. So there's always a little bit extra cash in there in comparison to some of the other positions that I've got going right now. The STRC and SATA, where they're at right now, I don't like selling them unless they're at peg, which is honestly when, MicroStrategy and Strive sell them to buy and acquire more Bitcoin. So under peg, I am generally buying in those positions, and I'll sell off the QQQY if I need to. That is something that's on the table as the market is down for certain positions that I have. But keeping it moving, we're gonna keep jumping on there. So my neutral positions, I would consider, for traditional finance guys, it's going to be your S&P 500. It's a little bit better than your saving money in the bank, but also you're still going, hey, I don't want to lose as much as I want to hedge my bets. I want to diversify. I want to protect this money that I've got. You're still protecting, but you want a little bit extra. You don't want to necessarily lose to inflation. You're trying to keep up with inflation. That's what I consider a neutral stance financially. So if you're kicked into a neutral stance mode, that's maybe after, if you were following the Dave Ramsey plan or some of the boomer logic, after you get your 6 months of living expenses, your emergency fund, that cash holding that they want you to just keep in cash, working really, really not working at all, but also the number doesn't visibly go down on the screen, even though the buying power does. Because if that emergency fund, if you got to use it for a repair and you're using it way later and it's in cash, you're going to be able to buy less repairs. So like if you have a stagnant number, whatever that stagnant number is when you decide it, it's going to be different when you go to use it because of inflation. So that maintenance, that service that you need has gone up in value since you made up this arbitrary number that you go, oh, I'm going to have $4,000 for the car. But like if the mechanic's rate goes up, now that $4,000 expense becomes a $6,000 expense, and you only have $4,000 saved up in that cash pool, and it wasn't keeping up with inflation to begin with. So maybe when you actually need it, there's $4,040 to help pay for your $6,000 expense. Just math, people. That's how inflation works. But neutral stance is you're going, hey, I want to keep up with inflation. So when that expensive emergency comes around, I want the pool of money that I have to be worth what that is. So it's like putting $4,000 in the S&P 500 that keeps up with inflation. Now, obviously not financial advice, but financial entertainment. And my base, I don't have a special piece of paper logic. This is just dumb blue collar logic here. Your $4,000 you put in there, now you have an expense, and it's years later. You've been compounding in the S&P 500, diversified, you're safely compounding. And now that $4,000 expense is actually a $5,000 expense. Well, since you were invested in a neutral stance position that's supposed to keep up with inflation, you have the $5,000. Now it'll wipe the account out. So like now you got to start over with the emergency fund, right? But you didn't have to use your credit card, and you actually had the money, the growth in the account actually kept up with inflation. So that bill, you can now afford that bill and you're still flat. So like that's what I consider a neutral stance position. For me and my portfolio, that equates to being for me, that is going to be for sure Chippy and GPTY also, and Ulti in its current iteration, because in its current iteration, it's kind of bouncing around the same area. So this used to be like an aggressive stance for me. And honestly, Chippy, because of the growth that we've been getting, is more aggressive than Ulti is. So Chippy is way more aggressive of a neutral position for me than Ulti is. But it's one of those positions where like I could almost say this is an aggressive defensive position at this point, because I'm going to be using it in every single portfolio I have. And in its current iteration with the growth, you're dealing with more volatility, but it's been all upside. That doesn't indicate that it's going to just keep rising, but it's a narrative that's a solid narrative. It's chips and semiconductors and data, in my opinion. But those three positions are kind of stalwart positions as far as neutrality goes. Like they're positions that I'd be willing to put in any portfolio. For me, more or less of a set and forget. Like I can pull the income off of these. I'm not super worried about it. They're not acting crazily. Now, Ulti used to act real crazy, and they've taken a lot of the volatility out of that even. But in these markets, it's like if you're hitting the narrative, so Chippy was kind of, it had a little bit of volatility to it, but once it started running with all the money that's going into it, you're making money off the money that's going into that sector. It's going to be the same with GPTY. There's going to be money flowing into the AI sector. It has to. So those are the plays. Those are kind of my neutral positions. They're aggressively neutral, which obviously, since QQQY for me is a defensive position in my portfolio with my risk tolerance, of course, you're ratcheting up quite a bit in income, volatility, and risk to get to my neutral. But in comparison to the other stuff that I'm invested in, these are really middle of the board for me for my income portfolio, because now we're going to step into our last and final stance that I have, because I got 3 years pretty much. And that last one is going to be the aggressive stance. Now, this is the degenerate stuff. This is the stuff where I'm like, hey, I don't have to go to work. This is the stuff that made it so that I don't have to go to work faster. Now, this is the moonshot. I'm trying to get out of the rat race. I don't want to have to subject myself to the same standards of living that most people subject themselves to, because they are not willing to risk or manage their money in the way that I do. And that's realistically all it is. It comes down to your risk tolerance, your intelligence, your financial intelligence for sure, your financial education for sure. I mean, it matters a lot more than your paper, because there's a lot of people who got those pieces of paper that aren't worth as much as I'm worth, that have to go to work, that make a lot more money than me, that have to go to work. So, it's par for the course. You get really skilled in one thing. My thing was math in regards to money, because I saw early on for me in my life that was going to be important. And I don't have the temperament or the proclivity to be the person who's just sitting there getting treated any kind of way because he has to be at a job. I'd prefer to not have to do that. I like to be able to quit. It's actually really nice. It's really freeing. It's a lot of freedom. And not only do I like to be able to quit, I like to be able to not have to go back or go back on my terms. I mean, those are baselines for me. So when we're looking at that, we have our AMDY, which is a yield max offering. We do a lot of yield max offerings. And the reason I have so many yield max positions in here is because this gives me the most bang for my buck in terms of margin. So I also have to look at income and my ability to tap into my margin to be able to facilitate things from time to time. Like right now, we're paying off the debt, so we're converting it over to margin so I can auto pay it down. Being able to get as much debt off the board as possible is kind of a big deal for me. And being able to, have that get paid down as quickly as possible during this season where we're focused on paying down that consumer debt. Those are big priorities. Now, if I was running the portfolio flat, meaning I wasn't using as much margin or any margin at all, and I was just living out of the cash that was coming in, that'd be a different conversation. But as it sits right now, we are running on margin. So having positions in that have access to margin is a big deal. So that's why it's heavily leaning into yield max funds, because honestly, right now, with the iterations that they have right now on some of these funds, they have some bangers. Not going to lie. AMDY has been performing really well. It's a new entry. But Chippy, Ulti, and GPTY is also a new entry. Those have been stalwart. Misty, we've been cycling in and out of. Maro has been a beast. CRCO, we're holding on to it, but it's been acting funny, not gonna lie. But we're where we're at with it. I like it. It's paying well. It's just crypto market's down, so it's down. CRCO is another one that's based on Circle. Been a good payer. It's been in the portfolio for a little bit. We are adding to this position as well. We've got a few different positions in here that we're adding into. That would be considered an aggressive stance. Again, we're trying to get as close to 100 or above 100% APY as possible. Max degeneracy, max risk, ratchet it all the way up. People are like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Because I like income and it works, and I don't have to, I'm not beholden to any of these funds. So out of the ones that are the aggressive stance, those are the ones that generally get cycled out or added to on dips. So then we've got Maro, MARO. That's another one. We've been doing really well with this. When you get into the snowball analytics side of things, where you can see how well the portfolio is doing with the distributions added in, most of these positions I am in the green on. msty, volatile one, max risk, micro strategy. Like, people are like, either love it or hate it. I love it. But again, this is a position that gets cycled when we are on dips like we are now. They get purchased. That's when I want to buy into these positions. It's, like this recent dip, people will be like, oh, MicroStrategy is going down. I'm like, every time it drops under 120, I buy 5 shares. Like, easy. If we drop under 100, I'm buying 10 shares. Like, as soon as it 99, buying 10 shares. Like, no questions asked. It's going to be easy decision for me. Because I am stocking up for the other side of the market, because I do not believe Bitcoin's going to zero. So if it's not going to zero, it's going to 1 million. That's just my opinion. The one thing that is not shown over here, obviously, all roads lead to Rome for me. So my Bitcoin purchases, that's what I save in, which under normal circumstance, I would say is a defensive stance. But it is a hyper aggressive stance under the current market, because so many people just don't understand Bitcoin and haven't integrated it into their financial systems yet, that, I'm super early. And I posted about this a few weeks ago, but being early and right can be the same thing as being wrong if you do not have the ability to survive. This is the reason having a financial structure and a financial system is important. It's the reason that I don't just buy Bitcoin. That, and the fact that I want to be able to leave the work. I wanted to be able to leave the workforce early. So, and get to, at minimum, job optional, work optional space where I can function from there, because then you can negotiate harder. You can not have to have that job, all those things. And being in that space is freaking awesome. I'm just going to say it. It's just better. Like, you got a little bit more pep in your step. Your chest pokes out a little bit further. So, the key to that is being able to stack Bitcoin and not have to sell your Bitcoin. And that's going to be the game. That's the battle of attrition right now. Now, I started in Bitcoin in 2013. So I'm sitting pretty good. I've put in a financial structure on top of my Bitcoin to where I don't have to sell my Bitcoin. And that's an important piece that a lot of people just glaze over. They get into crypto, they get into these spaces, they think they're going all in, and then something happens, an emergency comes up, and now you're having to sell all the crypto you accumulated, or you're selling all the Bitcoin. You're having to destroy the value proposition because you don't have the ability to be able to stay in the market and do nothing. That's why this matters. That's why these stances matter. So you got to figure out with your financial situation, because everyone's financial situation is different. I can only give a point of reference from mine, but these stances, when I talk to people about their finances, are the things that go into my mind. Like, oh, okay, so you're doing XYZ, you're in a defensive stance. Okay, so you're trying not to lose money. Cool. Why is that? What's going on? Like, what's your time preference? What's your time scale? Like, how long are you looking to do this? Are you looking to build something that's indefinite that might be able to be passed on? Or are you just trying to get to next year's vacation? Those are different things. But everyone falls into one of these 3 categories. You can kind of hit some middle grounds in between the 2, but generally speaking, you're going to be more or less in one of the 3. And understanding where you are and where you might need to be in order to move forward. So for somebody who doesn't mind working for 30 years and being on the boomer plan, you might not necessarily need that much of an aggressive stance. You might be able to sort that out in defensive and neutral. For those of you who are trying to get out of the rat race or be work optional or be in a position like what I'm in, that requires being in an aggressive stance. Like you got to be throwing haymakers almost, to be honest, because and you have to be able to not only set that up for the short term, but you also have to be able to go, okay, we're going to go hardcore aggressive and then start dialing back into neutral and defensive to be able to keep the longevity, because you can't just go aggressive and think that you're going to be able to get out of work and stay out of having to go to work. That it just don't work like that. Like you have to be able to get off the ground, start flying, but you also have to be able to stay afloat, which is where the neutral and defensive stances do come into play. Now, do I hold cash? No, I probably most likely never will. It's just not for me. Like I will hold cash in positions like STRC and SETA. I will hold cash in positions like the QQQY, SPY, stuff like that, where it's working, it's active. The income percentage is over what inflation generally is, something that I don't have to sell the underlying asset. I can live off the income it produces. But, and then, having Bitcoin as a base layer, that's my play. That's the secret sauce for me personally. But dialing back from having every position be an aggressive stance has been a process for me too. Like getting Chippy into the portfolio, GPTY, even bringing Ulti in at the current rates that it's at, because it's under 100%. And for me, when I first started out, we were throwing haymakers because I was like, I was in a situation I didn't want to be in. So I was like, I need to get out of this as quickly as possible. And I need to maneuver my money in the most efficient fashion to stop the initial pain. But like after we started getting towards our goal, it became important to pull back into those neutral and defensive positions and making those priorities and being able to look at how my income's coming in and go, okay, cool. Like I want to pay my house off at some point. I'm not super rushed on that, but like, I also don't just want to throw my money just head first into the mortgage, because doing that also ties that money up and makes it more difficult for me to get access to it. So instead of just continuing to pay my mortgage down, we started going into the STRC and the SETA positions to start building up that capital base, to build up that machine that can eventually start managing my mortgage payment. Because at a certain point, if you just keep saving in that and putting the extra money in that I would be putting towards the mortgage, eventually that pile of money becomes large enough to either do a bulk pay down that's significant, or it's producing enough to where now I can use the dividends, the distribution that it's paying, to start chipping away at my principal on my mortgage. Got two ways to go at it. I can just save it up to a certain point. And once it gets to that point, sell it off, take the cash, take that mortgage and, take a jab at it that way. Or I can use the income that it's producing as it gets to those larger numbers and start chipping away at the principal of the mortgage that way regularly. It gives me options. But being able to step back, a lot of people don't do that. They get really tied to the, I gotta keep making 100%. And it's like, well, managing that, especially if you're fully invested, that starts turning into a little bit of a black hole because of the way that those 100% jammies work, especially if you're working on individual stock and not a group at those levels, because there's a lot of volatility. So you do run into situations where you run into heavy NAV erosion during times. For instance, when MicroStrategy dips and you're all in on msty. I've done that. That is where the balance comes from. So hopefully this helps some of you guys. It definitely helped me. I was thinking about it, so I figured I'd just go ahead and shoot it and make it this week's video. Because I like to put into words and verbalize like the way that my brain works, especially like when I'm having conversations, because I love when people call me to talk about money. It's kind of my favorite topic. And as we're having those conversations, I start realizing the way that like my brain kind of goes, oh, okay, so like you're making these decisions like, oh, this is the stance that you're in. Okay, so I can talk to that. Oh, you're over here. Oh, you're getting ready to move to this stance. Okay, we can talk to that. Like, let's talk about that. And I figured, making a video to where I just go ahead and verbalize that, so that way it's out in the ethos and let you guys do what you do with it, because I'm not just talking to myself. There's like 5 of you that listen to me. So for those of you who are in the wolf pack that are here every week, checking out the videos, giving feedback, commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all the things, I appreciate you. And I think we're gonna leave it at that. I think that's what we're gonna do. And yeah, hope you guys really enjoyed it. I did. We will be back next week. This was another great bag talk. This is Future Financial Strategies, and I'm your boy Reckless Ray Dinero, and I'm out. Peace.
Money on my mind, yeah. Focus, got no time for games, nah. I don't play it, I'm all about that financial literacy. Investing in my future, building generational wealth. Dollar bills, they be calling my name, but I ain't chasing fame, I'm chasing change. Learn the game, now I'm playing it smart. Putting my money to work, it's an art. I'm stacking paper, building my own empire. No more living check to check, I'm getting higher. Investing in stocks, real estate, and more. Gotta secure the bag, that's what I came for.